today we are so excited to be speaking with EVY Chen, who is the founder of EVY Tea, a cold brew, better for you iced tea company with expanding distribution. EVY is regarded as one of the first to pioneer the cold brew tea movement by media outlets such as Forbes, BBC, and NPR. She is best known for her work in driving craft and innovation in tea, as well as her advocacy for people of color and minority communities. Welcome, EVY. We're really excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
A lot of founders have a moment in life or a series of moments in life that kind of lead them to having an inspiration or idea to make the world a better place and come up with an idea for a product or a brand that's not just about functional benefits, but really comes from a bigger place. What is the authentic backstory of starting this company?
So my moment of wanting to start EVY Tea was the first time that I tasted American iced tea when I came here into the States, and I honestly I couldn't believe what I was drinking, and it was very sugary. It was a lot of tea flavors that I didn't recognize, and it just didn't taste like tea at all. And the more I looked into the cold brew tea movement at the time, there was nothing available yet. Cold brew coffee was just becoming a thing. And I tried cold brew coffee for the first time. And I was completely blown away by their definition and translation of that ingredient. And right away, I thought, for iced tea, this could be a humongous opportunity to really rewire people's taste buds and brain of what iced tea's perception can be. And being, an Asian American myself, I sort of looked at it as an opportunity to speak for my community and my culture and my history, and really put a modern spin to this. So that's when that idea, I was like, nobody's doing this. Maybe I can try it. Began.
And what was the first tea product that you made?
I started out in this 10-ounce glass bottle that was a cocktail sauce bottle. And I went and bought a whole pallet. And at the time I was like, oh, I'm going to make it. It's going to be a lot of tea. So it was a 10-ounce glass bottle of white tea, peach, and ginger.
What made you come up with those flavors?
I honestly, at the time, didn't quite know as much as I do now, 10 years later, right? Looking back, I think I was very much trying to figure out what American market wanted. What do people want to drink? So I did a lot of research on other tea companies and brands, and just to see what universal flavors they had. They had green tea, they had white, they had black tea that's very sweet, and then they have peach, they have raspberry, they have lemon. So I wanted to do something classic, but with my own spin on it.
How do you think that your brand can impact people on the planet for better today?
That is such a good question. And I love that sort of questions, because a lot of people don't think there's anything more beyond just a product. To me, one of my driving mission, or we call it guidance as a person, is that I really find doing things for people, doing things for the community, doing things for a better good drives everything else, and everything else sort of falls into place once you find your purpose. And for me, my purpose really is seeing how big this iced tea market is here in the US. There are billions and billions of gallons of product being drank every year, and they're all very low quality. Not all, but a lot of them are lower quality. And really shining a light into the producers that has grown those crops, grapes, chocolate, cacao, or coffee beans. Those are commodities that are being treated as an art almost, right? There's a process to it. There is different soils. So those crops are valuable, and tea is no different, except maybe sometimes it's even a lot more, labor intensive. So I really want to take that angle and shine a light into how beautiful this ingredient is, and therefore the culture it represents, therefore the people who grow them, the people that process them, people who drink them. There's a lot of tea drinkers out there in the world, and there just hasn't been that, I think, that voice to lead us into the next chapter. And if I could, I would love to, be a part of that and really have a seat at the table, even, per se.
Absolutely. I mean, you're leading the table, so I'm really proud of you. And I think um, for our audience, I think it would be interesting to talk about your supply chain and how it is so different and how you're empowering all of the people involved, because that's a really interesting story.
Yeah, I went into the industry really without knowing anything about it. So I had to learn everything from scratch. And quickly, I was finding out as a very small producer that one, how come my distributor and my retailers are making most of the margins, and I don't make any. And second, how come like nobody's really talking about what's inside of those beverages, who's growing them, how are they sourced, but instead just focus very heavily on marketing, right? Just let's shout as loud as we can. To me, personally speaking, like as a consumer, I want to know that my product is good. I want to know how it's made. I want to know that people who make it care about it. So at EVY, my mission really is to bring the consumer experience, which is typically the end of the thought, to the front of the thought, sort of flipping the entire storybook and say, okay, if I want to provide my drinkers the best experience possible when they drink this cold brew tea, it has to start from the source. You have to figure out where and how and the teas are grown, who's growing them. By buying organic, by buying full leaf, you're selecting a better grade of tea anyhow, and working closely with the growers every crop and every year to figure it out what that harvest looked like. And that needs to be adjusted back into the flavor profile. And when you put that much sort of thought and heart and really talking to the humans that's operating this whole thing, you're understanding what vision they had for this ingredient. So then my job as a brewer is just to simply bring it out. So when you have a product that's like that, it's easier to have a conversation with the distributors and with your retailers and saying, hey, this product adds value for everybody along the supply chain, from who grows it to who makes it, which is me, to who sells it, which is you, to consumers. And I think that is just a much more holistic way of looking at supply chain sustainability than sort of focusing on, one tiny little point.
And is there a story around in the tea industry, if you could educate us, is there a story around small farmers and how are women impacted through this supply chain?
Absolutely. So tea is one of those ingredients that not a lot of people pay attention to, but a lot of the teas that we consume here in the US are industrially processed. So if you look at that ingredient, it's a much more finer, it's a powdery looking substance that's brown. And those are typically the leftovers from a larger batch. So they're lower in quality, they're lesser in flavor, but they're dirt cheap. So that sort of feeds back into the supply chain situation. So at EVY, my job was to look for the best ingredient possible. So when I started looking, I quickly realized a lot of the farmers here in Asia and Africa and all those places, they don't operate a gigantic tea farm, right? Those are smaller lots in remote places, people who harvest and plant and processing by hand. So that's labor intensive. And a lot of those lower skill laborers are produced by women. And so, during tea harvesting season, you see a lot of women with just like carrying a basket and actually going to the fields and picking that very delicate top bud of the leaf. And that really just brought the whole thing full circle for me, is that, that's where my passion lays, and I see them like in me and I see me in them. So yeah, it makes sense, right? Focus on the people who grow them, help them translate that ingredient into a better quality and better economic impact product, and therefore consumer can get a better experience.
And pulling that purpose from soil to shelf and into the hands of people, who are you trying to connect with? Obviously, you're selling to tea drinkers, but that's a really big market in the US. And every region of the US has different taste profiles and flavor profiles and taste preferences. I know that I've worked in this industry for many years. And, are you trying to connect with a different type of audience or a modern audience, or what are some of the insights that you've uncovered?
So this is again, a fantastic question. And I think as a grassroots entrepreneur, one of the benefits I've had of starting from nothing is that I practically had to carry this product in front of people who drink it and watch them as they drink it. And I would say my personal experience has broken the stereotype of what typically is considered as an iced tea drinker. It's people like me, there are people like you, there are people on the go, there are people at home. It's a huge amount of people who say, I want to drink iced tea. I know they're healthy. I know they're good for me. I don't like the taste. I don't like it. That's too sugary. And I didn't know how the categories actually just carry through. Like I found if somebody who's really appreciative of good stuff, whether it's coffee or cake or whiskey, once they understand that the perspective of craft is better, heart is better, better ingredients is better, more sustainability is better, then they understand what EVY is about. So this is a surprise to me, is that we not only have millennials, which typically is what a better for your brand target, we have people up to their 60s, 70s. And I got another comment the other day on my website as a review, said this customer's 7-year-old son asked for a can of Evi Palmer instead of chocolate milk. And his dad was shocked. And I was shocked. There's a wide range of us.
Wow, that's such a great story. That must have warmed your heart. And it's good because you're a D2C brand. And so you have direct contact with your fans, but you are truly D2C. Can you tell the audience how you started literally being the voice and the face of the brand and hustling all across the country when you started your company?
Yeah, and I still do that today, right? Like I just literally came back from a meeting and I meet one of my, like every single one of my suppliers, I meet every single one of my customers face to face. All the salespeople have my cell phone number that they could text me on. And I think hopefully my customers and people that are related to us, the company, the product, feel like they have a direct line to me and the company. So since the very beginning, I was very, I was concerned of putting my name out there because to me, it was never about me. This brand was not about me. It's not about a person. It's not about just my story. It stands for so much more. And quickly realizing that having a face and having somebody who cares about it actually do what she says is important for people. And that's what made me feel the most whole as a brand owner. And I can look at people and they would know what I mean. So I, everywhere I go, I'll send out a post, like, I'm like, hey, I'm in Memphis next Saturday and I'll be at this location, like come hang out. And that's who I am. And that became part of the brand. Is hopefully we're considered a very reachable brand, because I personally answer your Instagram messages. For those who are listening, I am the person who's typing you back. So FYI.
That's amazing. And like, do you have a name for, you obviously have a fan base. Do you have a name for your fans?
I don't. Like, anybody who has suggestions, it'd be interesting to know. And I don't consider myself having a quote fan base really. Like to me, like the only reason I'm able to have a company is because I have an audience who are kind enough, much like yourself, Kim, to who give a crap enough to listen to me and of what I have to say. And from a personal perspective, I know you don't have to spend your dollar with anybody. So the fact that like somebody is out there listening to me and supporting me in any way or shape they can is honestly what motivates me to keep going, because this thing's really hard, right? It's not for everybody.
Have you had moments where you've had a tear or you've had really bad days and you didn't know if you could keep going as an entrepreneur?
Oh, baby. It's so I say like I am devastated and happy at the same time all day, every day. It just, there's not necessarily a roller coaster, but the amount of emotion bandwidth, as well as sort of investment, is so overwhelming, even to a person who's who's wearing 100 hats all the time, right? It's always two sides of the coin. If we get an account, great. What's next? How do we get production money? How do we get pieces of marketing in place? Like there's just a lot of pieces that any one of them can go wrong at any moment, and they don't give you any notice. So as the founder, I have to go fix it. So it's both.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, I assume, like running this company.
Well, I mean, there's pressure for everybody. And then I just happened to pick the tallest mountain out there to climb. So in a way that, when I started the company, I didn't know how big it was going to become. We're still small today, but it's the very, very first time in a long time where there are a lot of movements and there's a lot of momentum, and there's just a lot of this like, oh, we're going to be arriving soon. Let's get ready to do that. And that constant change is not necessarily stress, but like it's challenging, right? And on one hand, it's very exciting and you get those highs. You're like, yes. And then there are the lows. You're like, that's not worth it. Like this it's not good, right? So it's constantly changing. And I think rather than taking it as stress, of sort of woven this whole thing into my life, and that's part of me, and that's part of who I am now.
Yeah, and I think along with that, you definitely have a set of corporate values and company values that you live by, and that helps you, I assume, to make decisions and just not just how you operate or put out fires, but also who you hire and how you behave in the world. Can you take us through those values?
Absolutely. And it took me a long time to actually come to terms with those values, because in a way that I grew up with the company, right? I started the company when in my early 20s. And just like any other girl in their early 20s, I didn't know what was important to me, and what I should say no to, no matter the cost. So I've said yeses to a lot of things that I had no business saying yes to, and a lot of people. So growing up with a company, I as a person, I realized that there is a particular light, an energy within a person that attracts a similar kind of energy. And when that energy attracts, you can do so much together, and no longer feels like you're just climbing this mountain on your own, right? You have a team of people that's surrounding you, that's supporting you. So finding those, what I call my tribe, was crucial. And one of there are many rules, but the rule number one is, we say, it's just a little bit of a swear word, but like we say like we don't want bad energy around us, right? So if you have a lot of ego, if you have a lot of, say this but don't do it type of energy, like that's not who we want. We want people who are really not necessarily just a hustler, but understand what it means to make a dollar and what it means to spend that dollar, right? Because in my head, I often think, okay, we're going to spend $30,000 on marketing. How many cans of teas is that? Because I've had every single job within the company, from like the bottler to the see everything. I've done everything. So those values are important to me, and the brutal honesty is important to me. Of that, having that trust to be able to say the hard things, but still maintain the relationships is important to me. So I would like to think after years and years and years, I finally have found, those people who won't just give me a whatever answer. They mean what they say, and they would do what they said they would do.
And how do you engage with your consumers with that same sense and that same spirit?
I think earlier on, when I was doing a lot of demos at Whole Foods and farmers markets, and I've heard a lot of very harsh words in terms of what my product was and was not. And over the years, through this journey of becoming more aware of my own purpose, my own sort of energy as a person, I realized I can't please everybody, and I can't try to mimic another brand or another product, or try to play their rule book, because guess what? The times are different, right? Like there was never COVID before. So there was no COVID playbook that I could have followed. So figuring out how to thrive within chaos was something that was very meaningful to me. So I try to be honest and just authentic of who I am, what I say, how I go through my everyday life. And I think that particular energy echoes a lot of people, because I think we all suffer. We all have days that's really, really bad. We all have days where we feel like maybe I'm not worth it. And I try to be really honest about things I go through as an entrepreneur, yes, as an immigrant, yes, as a woman of color, yes. And hopefully those sort of authentic journey sharing make people who are listening to me feel like they're more my friend versus I'm trying to sell it to them, because that's really not what I'm trying to do. So hopefully those people are what I call my community, that they share that light with others.
And have any of your consumers or your community altered a flavor or the product line, or any, change in your marketing tact, giving you feedback?
Yes. So one of our best selling flavors is called the EVY Palmer. So that is my take on a classic Arnold Palmer, which is a half and half. I didn't even know that existed. Coming from a very Chinese background, so I was very into your green teas, your oolongs, your black teas, and one day somebody asked me, would you ever make a half and half? And my head went to the creamer, the milk, the dairy aisle. I was like, you mean like milk tea? And they're like, no, lemonade. So that was a thrilling discovery, because there's not a lot of fantastic lemonades out there either. So that suggestion came from people directly, and now it's one of our best selling flavors. So absolutely.
Oh, that's great. So they help drive innovation. And in terms of innovation, there's other entrepreneurs listening today, probably small company founders and food brands. What are some of the lessons that you learned from starting your own company? What are 3 lessons that you've learned?
Oh my goodness. I would say that starting a company is very similar to having a pregnancy, as far as I've heard. That it's hard. It's really, really, really hard, and you don't know what it's like until you go through it. So for me, ideas are so easy to have, right? You can have a million of them every day, all day, every day. What matters is the execution. So that would be my advice. Number 1 is that it's great that you have an idea. Execution is what make that idea shine. And not all your ideas are going to work, and most of them are not going to work. But through executing them, I think you find quickly what you're good at, what you don't want to do. It is entrepreneurship for you, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot. That's my advice number 1. And I think advice number 2, which I hope, if I can talk to my younger self, I'll have given her the same advice, is I know it's really hard, but stay true to who you are. Like really look really deep inside and decide what's important to you, what matters, and stick to those principles. I wish I knew that when I started the company. And if I did, I think I would have had less, I have made a lot less mistakes, because I wasn't trusting my gut. I didn't know I could trust my gut. That was advice number 2. And advice number 3 is, there are a lot of people that are going to be around you, giving you all sort of advice, or ideas for labels, for packaging, for flavors, for money, how to structure company, who to hire, how to hire, how much money to raise. There's a lot of noise and information out there, and there's not one way to structure anything. My company is 100% unconventional. I have 15 other members. That's all around the country. We don't see each other on an everyday life anymore. There are a lot of different ways to run overheads, to run marketing, to run sales. There's just a lot of different creative ways that can do things. So don't feel like just because somebody who has been through the rodeo before a couple times before that their road book is going to work for you. Be dare enough to think creatively outside of the box, a lot outside of the box, break the box, rebuild a box, ask the question of what this box is, and find a way that works for you and really build a model around that.
And that's a good segue into my next question is this, you've just redone your packaging. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of meaning behind it. And it's truly a reflection of you. You had a real heavy hand in its design and your opinion. So could you take us through a little bit about the meaning of the packaging and why it is the way it is?
Absolutely. So I think that sort of linked back to my previous points about sticking to your gut and sticking true to who you are, right? There were a lot of uncertainty that I carried with me throughout the years, right? Because I just didn't fit the bill of a traditional entrepreneur. I didn't go to business school, right? My family didn't have, money for me to start this thing. So I was a bit of an odd individual outside of it all. And I never was that driven by the pure unit economics of let's sell 100 million cans at like 50 cents each. That was never who I was. So I never felt like I fitted into any of those processes when it comes to packaging and when it comes to all those sort of things. But I just didn't have time to stop and think and nor the resources to really pull through with this. Pandemic was the first time where the world stopped. Mm-hmm. And people were freaking out. People were getting scared. People were getting very anxious and closing their hearts. And I kind of just sat there and looked at the world and said, this is my game. Like I thrive in chaos. Like I thrive in not having any resources, because that's what I am as an immigrant entrepreneur, as a woman of color. So it was an important decision for me to actually not hide behind a product anymore. Decide that my name does mean something, that my attitude of life does mean things to my community and to my people, and therefore I want to let it out. I want to let it shine. So following through who I am authentically as a person and what do I stand for, what would I not compromise for, and really putting that on paper and say graphically it feels this way. And I think that was the most difficult part, is try to describe the energy that I'm trying to like put in this package so that people look at it and they get it, right? They get who Evie is, they get what my brand is, they get what I'm trying to do. So not carried a really heavy meaning for me. Hence we call it EVY Tea 2.0, because it's EVY 2.0 because it's the tea, and to me as a person growing up and sort of saying, you know what, like I have what it takes to have a seat on a table, and the only thing that stops me is me. So let's see, let's let this thing out. Let's see what happens if I let this thing run wild.
How has the reaction been to the new packaging from retailers and from consumers?
I would say that I was hoping that it would be well received, because it was a lot of work and it was a lot of heart that gone into it. It was a very risk decision. And I would say I'm completely blown away by the attention and the interest and the momentum it has generated from this new packaging. I heard from a lot of people who I've known for years, who are in the industry and sort of watched me struggle right through it all, and hearing their take on, yep, this is your best work. Yep, you're now ready to be a serious national player, a serious contender of a unicorn company. That carried a lot of weight to me. And then like all of a sudden hearing from all sort of crazy big companies, like people that I would have never thought will be interested, reached out to me directly as well. So I can't ask for more. I really feel like the team has done a stellar job, EVY internally, and everybody around us has helped us, and it's so far super well received, and we're on Amazon. I'm at Amazon, and reviews has been really good. So very encouraged.
That's wonderful. I think the packaging is strong too. What's the future of EVY Tea, and what's the future of the category in general? Where's the big shifts going to come in the next few years?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of innovation coming within the industry, right? So there are now sort of combinations of tea and tonics, tea and sparkling water and tea and soda. So there's just a lot of different combinations that drives innovation. And that's really, really encouraging, because I think the more people who are paying attention to this ingredient, the more awareness that we get to generate from having visibilities on the aisle, the better, right? So I personally think the better for you is going to stay. I think the whole low sugar is going to stay, and I really, really hope, it's just even for my own sake, is that the industry is going to shift a little bit more towards quality products with quality people with heart and story behind it, that drives purpose and mission above, let's call it profit, versus sort of the older model where profit comes first and nothing else matters. People don't matter, ingredients don't matter. All it matters is how loud we can shout and how many people we can get them to purchase how many gallons of this, right? So personally speaking, I hope that the industry is going to go towards more of connecting directly with their consumers and tell that purpose and tell that sort of, I call it mission. The further the buy-in can be, the stronger the relationships can be, the more we can shift the industry together. Because now when I pitch to a buyer at a retail chain, let's call it, my biggest pushback is nobody will pay more than $2 a bottle of iced tea. That's my biggest pushback. Not the quality of the product, not the packaging. It's that the consumers don't think tea as a category is worth more than $2 a bottle, right? The only way that's ever going to change for tea and for a lot of other upcoming ingredients will be us consumers who say, no, we value health, we value, heart, we value ingredients, we value sustainability, we value female founders, whatever that is. And that's the only way to change the industry towards a better direction, is that us consumers say, no, I'm going to choose to not buy that,
right. We're going to vote with our dollars. And I guess that's something that's really interesting, because you're proving them wrong, because you are selling your tea at a higher price point and consumers are buying it directly from you.
Yeah, and I think that is why a lot of my effort is going to shift towards consumer education, because there's a lot behind this product, right? There's a lot behind the category. There's a lot behind this particular drink. And I think the more I can get out there and talk to people directly, the better it will be. And I personally am hopeful. I mean, obviously I'm biased, right? Because this is my life, so of course I'm biased. But I'm very encouraged. I'm seeing category review managers who are younger females, who are minorities, who are people of color, who come from immigrant communities. I am seeing people voting with their dollars. And if we look at our Amazon, if you look at our sales records, we're going towards a different direction. So value and dollar, right? Low dollar, sell a lot of it. We're still selling quite a bit, but our dollar amount is higher and our consumers are stickier. They come back to it, like almost, I would say, as is today, like less than 12% of my customers buy one case and that's it. Like they buy multiple and then they buy it all the time. And you see those repeat orders. So that's a tricky model and risky model to prove, but I think there's meaning behind that. right? That those people are truly engaged and they believe in what I do. And that's amazing. There's a lot that goes into producing this beverage. It's a very labor intensive, but there's a lot of art and there's a lot of culture that's in this, that I personally made the decision to speak up more about it, part for the industry, but also part for everybody down the supply chain, right? If we're not worth more, we're always going to get stuck in that frame. Just like women, we're worth what we're worth, and so equality is not, the equality should be the default. It's not a benefit. It's not a bonus. So yeah, I just think that, if I'm the first, great. Hopefully there's many more to come before, like after me, but we got to do our part. Like we have to educate people that there's a lot behind tea and we're worth this because it's
right.
It's stuff.
Are there any unique customer experiences that you're thinking of offering that other brands don't, outside of, within this category or outside of this category?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because so I used to own and operate tea bars. They're like, retail cafe style that you can come in and taste samples and try different things. And until today, my personal favorite moment ever is when I put my product in front of people, whether it's a buyer, whether it's a distributor, whatever. The moment they cracked open a can or open a bottle, the first sip they took, I love that light in their eyes. They're like, holy, what is this? I love that particular moment. And I think the experience stick with you for a really long time. So my mission is to capture that experience and hopefully encourage sharing of that particular experience. So we are actually designing a demo box, as I call it. They are different teas inside and say, this is ours, this is theirs. Look at it, right? This is the ingredient that we used. This is the ingredient they used, and have a little bit of a interactive experience with a QR code on that particular box, where I'm talking through how to taste the teas, what to look for, what notes are there, what are the historical significance of this particular crop. Talk a little bit about the origin. Talk a little bit about how those teas are made. Just like I would have done if I was in a tea bar or in a demo or in a sales meeting. We're going pretty heavy with the idea of really fully immerse our people into this particular tea experience, that any tea you will ever drink after EVY, you're ruined. Like this is it.
Yeah, it's really interesting you mentioned QR codes, because there's a real increase in QR codes on actual packaging. It's kind of the new package design trend, because the packaging becomes a media platform and it becomes a place to deliver content. And that's a new way to think about packaging, because it's not just about moment of truth and attraction on the shelf, especially when that shelf is digital today. So can you take us through that technology and how you think storytelling through the packaging is going to change?
Absolutely. I think the food service industry, specifically restaurants, have always been very inspiring to me, right? Because if you think about it, you have a glass of craft beer in a bar. It can be the exact same beer in a can, in a bottle, in a supermarket, completely different, user experience. So when I travel back to origin, a lot of times I spent a good amount of time in Asia during, harvest seasons and so on and so forth. I love going around just to see what they're doing. Japan specifically, China's doing an increasing amount of everything digital. So that QR code thing, I think, happened back in Asia, as far as my memory serves, at least 5 to 6 years before it's ever landed here in the US. It was everywhere. So at that time, I was like, okay, that's a really interesting way of delivering an experience in a short format. Into a restaurant, you'll scan this QR code and the menu pulls up, and you can spin the bottle on that app and really see what the bottle is about before you order it. That was cool. And so when I saw QR code landed here in the US and sort of becoming more common as we eat out more and so on and so forth, right away my light bulb went off and said, my brand, me specifically, we're all about storytelling. We're about really putting something real in front of people, and that gets lost in a lot of other platforms. Bidding on ads, for example, I would never win the bidding war against organic IC on Amazon. Just not. Any like bigger company can outbid me in any day. So to me, that storytelling element of presenting what's real in front of people becomes crucial. So how else do you get people to get to engage with you if they already picked up a can, if they already picked up a unit from the shelf? You already win the hardest war, right? Now, how do you keep this person and establish a relationship with the person? Much like dating, much like blind dating, you got to keep the contact point up, right? For the relationship to keep going. So I dare to say that my company is specifically invested in that authentic relationship, throughout supply chain and throughout consumers and you guys that are listening to me today. So that's that, and it's an exciting development for me.
That's such a great innovation and story, because we're going to see more and more of that, but you are truly one of the first pack of brands that's really engaging that consumer through, and just using, like I said, packaging becomes media. It's just a new way to think about things. Well, before we wrap up, I know that we're almost out of time. I just like to ask this question to people. What's one thing you do every day to make yourself healthier and happier?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. It's such a deep question as well. I think is understanding and recognizing that I am a complex being, and therefore I'm allowed to have a wild range of emotions and experience, and therefore that center that anchors me becomes much more clear. Now I say to people, I'm an oil rig anchored in a deep sea. So if there are waves that are coming around me, that's okay. They're gonna come, they're gonna pass. I'm anchored though. So constantly reminding myself the wins are okay, the losses are okay too, and just keep my 2 feet on the ground and one step in front of another, and focus on the tangible progress while keeping sight at, are we going that same direction? Have been super crucial to me of maintaining that healthy mindset and therefore improved relationships between me and food, between me and other people, and between me and just myself. So that's my answer.
How much tea do you drink every day?
I would say that I drink a decent amount, but I also hoard the really good ones for special occasion, which is I make tea for a living. I should be able to enjoy them as much as I want to. So I would say I drink a good amount, like a really good amount, probably higher than your average person. But I drink just as much coffee. And I appreciate good stuff. So coffees are good too.
Well, thank you so much. And one thing that I'd love to remind you is you don't need a seat at the table. You are the table, and you matter, and your voice matters. And everyone that's listening today is so appreciative of hearing what you have to say, because you do matter. So thank you.
No, I thank you, because if we make it, we as us women entrepreneurs, if one of us make it, we all make it, and we got to do what we can to help one another. So I appreciate your platform. I appreciate your love, and thank you everybody for listening.